I'm not much of a speaker. I'm more of a talker, which means that I don't have ebbs and flows and get emotion going in people. I just tend to talk about what's in my. I'm not that fucking sure. Okay, so we're going to discuss heritage or talk about heritage today. Now, Ross said to me that I'm heavily into history and heritage on every single level in what I do. As a matter of fact, most of the work that I do involves heritage or history in some level or another, be it music, politics, ancestral, whatever. So Ross said to me, I need to come and share my experiences with you. And then hopefully I can influence you to also have heritage and history in your life. So I want to start this by telling you a small story. I'm sitting in this bar in Prague, and these two gentlemen are having a very heated discussion in Czech. And the discussion is getting more and more heated, and eventually the barman says, in typical Czech fashion, "You are upsetting the rest of the people in the bar, please take this outside." So they're standing on the pavement and they're continuing the discussion. And the bar is serving them beers, you know, it's like all very chill. And then eventually they finish the discussion, they come back in. I turn to my Czech friend and I say, "What was this argument about?" And he says, "Oh no, they're just having a discussion about this war that happened in 1366 and who was actually responsible for it." Now, that's heritage. It's people who go back and they build whenever they move forward. They build on where they come from. So just as a quick exercise, I want you to think of the name of your great-grandparents. Not your grandparents, your great-grandparents. How many people know their full names? Okay, it's less than half. Okay, so there's your first self-study. Let me tell you how I got involved in this. About 15 years ago, my then wife, I have a few ex-wives, and it's fun, except my dad doesn't want to pay for the next wedding. But anyway, my then wife, her parents died in a car accident while they were living in our house. They were on their way to move to Germany, and in their rounds to say goodbye to everybody, they died in a head-on collision just outside Piet Retief, in very heavy mist. And so we were obviously very shocked and very emotional about the whole thing. And then after the funeral, we started going through their things, and we realized that Polly doesn't know anything about her parents' past, that has never been shared. So I immediately got on the phone to my father, who lives in Cape Town. He's retired. He comes from a little town called Graafwater, which is literally like 4 gravel roads this way and 4 gravel roads that way. And the hotel and the station and the police station is basically like, you know, in the same place. And anyway, that's a different story. So I contacted my father and I said to him, I need to know where I come from. I need to know my roots. So I flew down to Cape Town. We got in the car and he drove me to all these little places where he grew up. This is the rock that we used to hide under when it was raining, when we walked home from school. This is where we used to get water once a week. This is where, and he took me through the whole thing, including Graafwater's museum, which is basically like a room in a house where my great-grandfather's suit was, the first evening suit ever to be worn in Graafwater. Okay. So, and I mean, we went to all these places, like odd places like Herenlogement, and it's like all the road signs are rusted. But he still remembers it from when he was a kid in the 30s. So he had this real pilgrimage, and I got introduced to where I really come from, or ancestrally where my footprint is. So we're sitting in a situation now where in most high schools they don't even teach history anymore. Both my kids, the one's 22 and the one's 26, they didn't have history as a subject. The only history they're exposed to is their own. If you look at the SABC, you look at Gallo Record Company, you look at the film archives in Pretoria, these places are a mess. At the SABC, they taped over Mbeki's inauguration, so that footage is lost forever from the SABC point of view. Yes, you are allowed to laugh, because who the fuck does that, you know? They have acetates from the 30s that I play on my radio show sometimes. But these acetates are so brittle, some of them haven't been touched since the 30s. If you pick them up, then they break. And the same is happening at Gallo. Gallo has one of the biggest and longest running histories of South African music, and they're just letting it go. The National Film Archives in Pretoria, it's not virtually impossible to find something there. It is impossible to find something there unless, you know. So and this is a really bad reflection on who we are as people. I was in Nigeria. I work there quite regularly, and they had this thing on one of the World Heritage sites about this wall. It's a 30-kilometer wall that's 12 feet high, like what's that, 4 meters high, 4 meters high, and nobody knew about this in the area that I was in. So eventually, with GPS coordinates, we found it. It was the back of a chicken shack, and nobody knew the historical significance of this wall, which was built 300 before the birth of Christ, as one of those city-states, and nobody knows about it, and we can't allow that to happen. Now, we're sitting in a situation here where we all know that history is written by the victor, okay? So, you know, the Nats had their version of history, and so does the current government. They also have their own history. I'm sure we, as creative people, you have all been exposed to Miriam Makeba and Yuma Sakela, and, you know, we get to hear about these things like endlessly. Sophia Town, it wasn't this great little place, you know, it was like a little gangster-infested place, but that's irrelevant. But the government also decides that there are certain things that they want to be remembered. One of the reasons Tsetso Mashinini is virtually an unknown name in this country is because he's one of the guys that started the 76 riots. Did anybody know that? Ha, the black dude did. Oh. And but history does not remember him because he's not a member of the ANC, and he was never a member of the ANC. And it also puts a whole question mark over who really started the 76 riots. Did the ANC just claim it afterwards? Were they actually involved in the or the whole thing behind it? And people don't want questions asked by their past. They if you're going to write history, you're writing it your way. So already we are finding that a lot of South African history is going away. It's disappearing, and it's disappearing because there's either no money to preserve it, or there's no interest in preserving it. So okay, so this is the place we're at right now. What I started doing about 5-6 years ago is I've always been incredibly interested in history. When my friends had scrapbooks with like rugby and cricket heroes, I had a scrapbook on Idi Amin, and I had one on Haile Selassie, and the Groot Trek and the Ku Klux Klan. Those were the 4 things that interested me as a kid. And so, well, you know, it pays to be diverse. The bigger the footprint, the easier it is to find work in this industry. I'm sure you all know that, you know. Diversification is the future. So what happened in 1990 when FW made this famous speech, you know, about the release of Mandela? I went to my then boss, at Tusk Music, and I asked them to give me money to start an Afrikaans music label. And everybody laughed at me because everybody predicted the death of Afrikaans, because, you know, now it's not going to be protected anymore by the RTKV and the SABC and the NG Kerk and the government and the whoever else. And my argument at that point was that Afrikaans will survive because of its commercial viability. I've been proven right. But then it was a bit more difficult to actually do it. So people are make a lot of presumptions about history and what can work and what can't work. Now, Big Blue started a couple of years ago. They started with this Afrikaans iconography, is that the correct word? On their T-shirts, you know, like Piet Retief and Old Boxer Tabak and all of these kind of things. And it turned out to be incredibly successful. And that kind of thing is very important for your heritage when it becomes commercially viable. So what I started doing is I started incorporating a historical aspect in a lot of the work that I do. We started off by doing a television show, a reality television show called Fortuinsoekers, which we did for Kyknet. In the first season, we went looking for the Kruger millions. So it was like a treasure hunt, and it was based on South African history, like actual factual history. And during our research to make the series, we actually discovered undocumented English soldier graves that we brought the British consulate in contact with. So what we did was we had 48 minutes on television once a week in the form of entertainment. But it also gave across history. So at the end of the series, we published a map with all the GPS coordinates, and we know of like 25 families that actually did the route over the December holidays, therefore actually like went to track down their history. Now, as people who are in the creative industries, obviously there are opportunities to use this. When we started making the Punk in Africa documentary, just when we started pitching in Europe at the Rotterdam Film Festival, we had this whole presentation. I know I'm supposed to show slides. He told me that I can't keep your attention that long. And, I'll show you some stuff now. So we had a whole presentation, and the moment the title Punk in Africa came up, everybody was like, punk in Africa? And immediately we had everybody hooked. We didn't even have to do the rest of the presentation. Now, a lot of South Africans don't even know about the huge punk rock movement that was here in the 70s, how the police actually had roadblocks outside cities to prevent these bands from getting in and performing. So what we did was we started making this film, and firstly, nobody believed in the film except for the National Film and Video Foundation, who gave us 100K, which is about good enough for like a really nice sushi lunch. But that's when you make documentary films, that's what you do. So we started making the film. There were no archives. Okay, so we started using social media as a connection point, and we had one guy discover unprocessed 8mm film that was shot in Johannesburg. He lives in LA. It was shot in Joburg in the late 70s. We had that processed. We found pictures that I took of punk bands in Poland. We tracked it down to Poland. We found VHS cassettes in London and in Prague, and we found one of the big players in punk rock in South Africa literally lives around the corner from our co-filmmaker in Prague as well. So what we did after the completion of the film is we were approached by the University of Stellenbosch and their music archives, and the University of Stellenbosch now has a fully researched punk archive, which, you know, when I was running around in the 70s with my little Mohican and my Docs, I never thought that it would get to this point. And for me, it feels really good to be at this point. And when we started seeing the success of these things, we actually started concentrating more and more on it. So let me show you a bit about just like 2 minutes of punk in Africa.
The match between Rhodesia and the South African side attracted a large crowd. Among them, Sir Humphrey Gibbs, the sole standard bearer of legitimate British rule in a breakaway state.
While the swinging 60s were sweeping the world, the southern tip of the dark continent remained the last bastion of colonialism. The liberation struggle continued in 3 southern African countries: Rhodesia, now known as Zimbabwe, Portuguese East Africa, today Mozambique, and apartheid-era South Africa. As the rest of Africa experienced the euphoria of independence, we had racial segregation and illegal border wars. The Western world had youth-driven protest movements. We had Radio Lorenzo Marx. The Rolling Stones were banned from the radio, and long hair was definitely not the fashion. And when the Soweto uprising arrived in '76, so did the raw energy of punk. This is the story of the role that punk played in our struggle.
It is 16:23 now. We are giving you 3 minutes. At 16:26, you must have disintegrated. Thank you very much.
Let me tell you something. I claim for you, sexy buddy.
LM Radio 1970.
Who is making the whole world swing? LM Radio.
If you think about those days, it was easy. All you had to do was strap a guitar on, swear at the people, play some fairly aggressive music. We were escorted out of Rhodesia, Petersburg, banned from Cape Town, banned from Durban, a roadblock to stop us getting into Velcom. All sorts of things happened in those days, strange things. The vergramte, as they used to call them in those days, students, came down, got hold of, I don't know, 10, 20 guys, cut their hair off. Petersburg, we had the whole of the South African Air Force down outside the hall with different weapons. So Moose and I got out the van. I had my claw hammer because that was my weapon of choice. It was the most vicious thing. The situation was so incredibly dry, hollow. There was very little soul in the country then. It was a short haircut, straight into the army, marching round, and then look for a job if you actually got out of the border alive.
When I went to see Suck in 1970 at the Joburg City Hall, I was about 2 rows from the front when they chopped up the Joburg City piano with an axe, and they had dummies filled with blood which you used to hack on stage, and they had big signs like, you know, fuck the SABC and halt censorship and everything. That's a
cool. It's a great movie. I promise you that. And I have a spare copy in the car if you're interested. All right. Okay, so...
Texas style auction.
Okay, so I'm going to show you another piece. I do this television program as well called Jam Sandwich, and the whole idea behind Jam Sandwich that has a bit more of a social rather than a political thing around it. In that, what we try to do, the South African music industry is very diverse, and the only people who are still keeping apartheid in place are the radio stations. They are still playing music to a very, very specific demographic that divides more or less along color or language lines, or religion in some cases. So what is happening is that there's a lot of really interesting South African music that happens, but a large portion of the South Africans don't even know about it because they're never exposed to it. So the idea behind Jam Sandwich is to take artists like a hip-hop artist and a Boere music artist and put them together for 3 days, and then they have to write a song, rehearse the song, and then record it in the 3 days. And the SABC at this stage is incredibly scared of white Afrikaans people, and actually having them as viewers freak them out even more, as you can see with the whole SABC2 thing that's happening now. So in order to prove a point, what I did was I put 2 white Afrikaans artists together. In this case, Jack Parow and the Klipwerf Boere Orkes, and which on paper, theoretically speaking, should be at opposite sides of the spectrum, yet it was the easiest song that's ever been made on the show. Unfortunately for us, it had the highest ARs for the whole season. It was bigger than Mendoza. It was bigger than Sibongile Khumalo. It was bigger than The Soil, all of these things. So then the Wit Gevaar became too prominent at SABC2 and they canned the show. But that's a story for another day. But I just want to show you a little snippet of that as well, and how we do the whole thing. And then I'll play you, then I'm finished, okay? And then I'm just going to play you the song, and you can either watch it or you can go and get more coffee, all right? I have a couple of questions. Oh, you have...
Together as a band for 44 years, 1.5 million records sold. All the way from Calvinia, this is Klipwerf Orkes. In the other corner, we have a man who is rewriting people's perception of Afrikaners. A man known to be at loggerheads with the establishment, the rapper Jack Parow. 3 days, 2 musicians, 1 song. Will the Boere and the Lighty from the city gel? What will the bastard child sound like? Stay tuned for the next hour to find out. This is Jam Sandwich. It's 8 o'clock on a Monday morning, a time when any self-respecting musician is still sound asleep. Even worse, it's the very un-rock and roll sport of golf that we see here. Who could be this uncool? Or is this someone who is making new things up as he goes along? Someone who is both thumbing his nose at the establishment, but also writing new rules for them.
Boom, bitch!
Yo, Jack Parow, bro, fucking fresher than Zed. That's so nice.
Part of the new wave of Afrikaans rappers, Jack Parow is making people change their mind about Afrikaners.
Jack Parow, bro, die fucking big roll some braai. So baby, jy kan maar jou fucking steaks op die grill laai.
Away, it's Jack Parow, dangerous Afrikaanse rapper van Belwela. Hoe lyk dit?
Hoe kom hy nou? Osja!
Parow, along with bands like The Antwoord and Bitter Einder, is at the cutting edge of new emerging Afrikaans sound. Their use of provocative and explicit lyrics with music videos to match is not for everyone's taste, but Jack wouldn't have it any other way.
Ek weet jy, die beeld van Afrikaans wat ek uitsit, dink ek voel is 'n fresh half look op Afrikaans. Ek dink mense, die Afrikaner is so bang om die Afrikaanse image te hou in die manier wat dit was, maar vir die wêreld is daai ou image van Afrikaans die verkeerde image om uit te beeld. Want Afrikaans is my 'n amazing taal en mense het gesê, mense soos Breitenberg en self het gesê Afrikaans is besig om dood te gaan al groot Afrikaanse mense en ek was soos ek dit as julle dink Afrikaans is dood, dan is Afrikaans nou myne, dis mos nou dood, so ek gaan dit oorvat en dan maak ek dit my eie. So ek is nou die nuwe leier van Afrikaans, so as enigiemand enigiets wil weet oor Afrikaans, bel my, e-mail my, want die res van die mense moet net off.
Ek's fantasties.
Contrary to popular beliefs, Jack's success didn't happen overnight. He started out rapping with crews from the Cape Flats and has been at it for 9 years. Recognition came when he collaborated with the Heelwels Fantasties on the track Die Vraagstuk. Shortly after, his track Cooler as Ek oozed into the public's ears and the radio, and then of course, the limelight.
Ek het nooit in my lewe gedink dat Buid-Afrikaanse rapper van Bellville sou ooit iets kan raak. So ek het nooit moed opgegee nie, want dit was nooit my. Ek het al gedink ek gaan dit nooit kan doen vir 'n lewe nie. En ek bedoel in Suid-Afrika ook nog en so en toe ek half begin regtig fokus op musiek was rock and roll, soos almal het net rock and roll geluister. Niemand het meer rap musiek geluister nie. So ek dink ek het 'n hoop gehad om dit te doen nie, maar toe het ek net aangehou en dit half net gedoen vir my eie vibes en so en vir my eie genot wat ek almal sal sê. En toe het op die eind gewerk, so.
Considering his music genre and associated perceived lifestyle, Jack's love for golf, arguably the most anti-gangster-like sport in the world, is questionable at best.
Ek het begin golf speel omdat ek kon lekker rondstap op die golfbaan en dagga rook die hele tyd en iemand sê my ek kan nie in 'n rugby game 'n joint aansteek nie. So dit was die myn ding. En toe van daar af, toe het maar net al 'n fun ding raak om te doen. Iets lekker om so my chommies rond te rol op die golfbaan te praat. En 'n paar bolle rond te slag.
And as usual, with the cameras rolling, Jack performs at his best.
Gangster shit. Yo, can't you believe that? Jack Sparrow, motherfucker.
Okay, now I mean even Zander, the whole thing that he portrays speaks of heritage. And it's, I think you find it, especially at the moment amongst Afrikaans people, where our past is so messed up and so wrong, and people are trying to find this new identity, and you now see like almost like a post-politically correct phase with Afrikaans people and their heritage. So okay, so do you want to discuss anything? No. See,
what are your grandparents' names?
Eh?
What are your grandparents' names? Great grandparents.
George Michael Moss. That's actually an interesting story because what happened was that my great grandmother was blue blood, and George Michael Moss was the blacksmith to this royal blue blooded family, and then the daughter fell in love with him. And they were shipped off to South Africa to no scanda in the family kind of vibe. Oh, and they started a butchery and a bakery. And then, how's this, man? Everybody parts off in Cape Town. Everybody starts in Cape Town except the 1820 settlers. But that's the English for you, So he's in Cape Town. There's like the whole of Stellenbosch, Franshoek, Parel, like a wine farm. Nope, this mofo has to move up this way into the desert in a place where you can't even grow potatoes. Now, and I mean, I've seen the farm, the family farm, and it would have been so much better if you moved this way, because then I could have been like a trust fund baby. Sorry?
Oh, you said earlier on we teach history in school anymore. Now, obviously, if you're into history or interested in that, we'll go for it. Have you found a solution yet on getting other people just pay interest in what happened before, whether their heritage or just in general? Because there seems to be a lot of it.
This is why I try to incorporate it with my work. Why we try to incorporate historical elements into Fortuinseekers and Punk in Africa. Well, I mean, Punk in Africa is a historical. It's like a heritage movie. So, and what I'm saying is that everybody in this room has the ability and the platform to actually put heritage or make heritage part of their work. They must just understand that they have a duty to subvert traditional thought. I mean, isn't that the purpose of being creative? The subversion? Or am I wrong here? Come on, man. see, if you sing the stem, that's subversive. Amandla is not subversive anymore. That's the mainstream now. If you sing the stem, then it's a then you're making a statement. Not the right one, but not.
You reckon just taking whatever heritage you're interested in, just making it commercially viable?
That's what's good, because history, the only thing that's going to save history is if we make it commercially viable, like Afrikaans saved itself by being commercially viable. So history needs to be made commercially viable. It doesn't help, do you know, does anybody know about the Foster Gang? Okay, the Foster Gang were like Joburg's Bonnie and Clyde, right? They killed a couple of cops. Somebody's very weird sense of humor. The cops in the Braamfontein cemetery, the cops that they killed is literally 2 rows away from where they are buried. So in death they were closer than in life. But anyway, that's it. But okay, so the cops were tracing them. This is how De La Rey got killed. General De La Rey. They had roadblocks all around Joburg to try and catch the Foster Gang. And General De La Rey drove through, and they shot and they killed him, the cops. But as their last stand, they got stuck in a cave in Kensington, all right? And it was long wheeling and dealing, but eventually they allowed his wife and his kid inside with him. And then, the kid left and his partner left, and the one partner had killed himself, and then he killed himself and he killed his wife inside this cave. And this cave is still there. I go there. But nobody else wants to go there. So you need to figure out a way to tell people or to show them the cave without trying to take them there. Actually, I was in Daisy de Melker's house. Daisy de Melker, of course, the woman that poisoned all her husbands, last woman to be hung in South Africa. I was at her house in Witfontein. It's still there. It's like, not in a good condition anymore. But I love things like that, and for me it's quite interesting to tell people about things like this, or to incorporate in my work, or to write about it. And that's the only way we're going to keep history alive.
Is South Africa the only country which does not value its heritage and history? Because if you look at how Hollywood makes its movies, their reputation of their history from starting with their superheroes like Batman and the Supermans. And with us, our history, we just want to push it in their pockets and not talk about it.
Yes, and this is why I'm saying that you as a creative need to change that. I think one of the problems is that we have a really dodgy history. I mean, here's our problem. Okay, so we have 1,000-year history, but it only started being written down in 1652. All right, so that's our first problem. Because it's written down, it's a lot stronger than oral history, right? I mean, they recently made this discovery in South America, and this tribe of people that died like 10,000 years ago, but they didn't even know they existed. They found some of their tombstones and things like that, but they have no written history, so nobody has any knowledge of this whatsoever. Nobody even knows what they were called. So this is our first problem. Then, from 48 till 92, history was rewritten. I mean, I must tell you some incredible things. Like, did you know that Buddha music was like incredibly huge in the 30s? It was like the rock and roll of the day. These oaks, these Buddha music artists, they drove Cadillacs and they fucked everybody's wives and daughters and girlfriends. Right? And they sang songs. I've got this one song from the 30s. It's like, al die rokers by mekaar, maak 'n doppie, maak 'n stoppie, let's get stoned, let's get drunk. And this was huge, and this is how the Afrikaners partied. And when the Nats came to power in 48, that was the part of the Afrikaner that they didn't want to acknowledge, because that was way too African, this Buddha music thing. Okay, so what do? They ban all Buddha music from the radio. They kill the industry in one shot, and they start importing European music, and they put Afrikaans lyrics to it. A thing that is still relevant today, Kurt Darren, these kind of guys, but it was started by the Nats. I had a very interesting conversation with a Sangoma. She's a young woman, she's also an editor. And she said to me that the Afrikaner's growth as a person was interrupted by apartheid. And what is happening now is that some people are trying to continue where they left off in 48, and some people are trying to build a new thing. And that's where the conflict comes from. But you should know by now that why our history is so confused and confusing, and why nobody wants to actually be there anymore, and why the government is scared of it. But in the meantime, we have a generation of kids growing up without any history. People don't even know, like public holidays. It's like the 16th of December. Okay, what is this? The, you know, whatever, I can't even think of other public holidays. But people don't remember the historical significance of anything. And these born frees, or even worse, they just want to party the whole time. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I firmly believe in that philosophy. I'm quite amazed that everybody's here so early.
I mean, you something now, you says that you take a focus on heritage. And I think if we look not just South Africa's history, the history of human beings, it's so complex and so diverse. As you said, if you look to Afrikaner culture, what is it? In 48 they had to try and box it and define it. But it was so multiple and complex, you know, in its different articulations or different expressions. But that almost goes against history, because we want to make it nice and clean.
No. Firstly, history should not be cleaned up.
Yeah.
Secondly, my history and your history are two different things. So what I'm talking about is like finding the history and the heritage inside yourself, inside your own bloodline, and your immediate environment, knowing why you fit into a specific environment, knowing where you come from. I mean, who I am today is not who I'm supposed to be. I come from a very strict, old school Afrikaans conservative household, you know. Dad was main elder in the church, mum was another thrower landbou in. So I'm not supposed to be this way. So what caused these changes? And so it's almost like a psychological trip as well, where you've got to figure out who you are and where you come from and where you're going. Because, you know, if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going either, you know.
But isn't that the point? We want it to be clean, that we can box it and shelve it nicely, but it's not. It always wants to get out of the box.
Well, history is always a mess, because, you know, there's his story and their story, and then there's history, you know. But it's important to actually take control of it in your own immediate environment. And I understand what you're saying, that it's a mess and people want to box it in, but at some point they've got to come to some kind of agreement. I mean, if they could figure out a constitution together, you know, surely all the parties can figure out the true history of South Africa. They should just do those Reader's Digest books. There you go. Because they're more or less right, you know.
Do you think that there is a very, very big imperative on this right now as opposed to before? Think about Africa. And recent parts of Africa, I'm told recently was mainly written from a European perspective, but what I'm seeing now is, more people in Africa are taking hold of history, the pendulum is just swinging the other way. It's now becoming a narrative very extreme from the other side, and there's no middle ground. And are we not now in a very delicate spot where really a lot of our future and our cultures will be decided by how we interpret this history? But there's a further in the air for people to try and grab hold of it, and they are grabbing hold of radical elements instead of a more sober analysis or really studying it. So it's becoming, history is becoming convenient as opposed to something worth studying. So do you think there's a need that we have to be a lot more proactive about this?
I think one of the biggest dangers to history is our current obsession with political correctness. I think political correctness plays a huge role in destroying history, because it's used by either one of the two sides like, I mean, the history of slavery, for instance, is something that has been written about and discussed for centuries. Yet, if if you get stuck in Calabar in Nigeria and you start talking about the role that the local tribes played in procuring slaves, nobody wants to talk about it. It's not the right thing to say. It was the white people that did it, and it's the Arabs that did it, and that's it, you know. So the history around the slave trade will never become a real history because it's been used for political ends. And unfortunately, the people who control the country are also the people responsible for the history. And so things get sidetracked and things become like little sores, actually, that nobody, it's like, okay, let's just stick a plaster on it. Whereas what I'm saying is that if the general public takes a bigger interest in history and do not actually focus solely on the political correct aspect of it, then we can actually have history growing, because then it's not controlled, then it can go on its own. And that's what history needs to be. It needs to be freed from all these shackles.
Can you give us like a general timeline as to when your other projects will be completed, the documentary you spoke about, and where we can find your other work?
Okay, the book is called Witboy in Africa, and it was published about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's around like exclusive books and places like that. It did really well. It talks about my travels into Africa. My new book is about my travels into Europe. My new book goes from the point of view that for the past 700 years, the Europeans have come to Africa. They have stolen our gold, they've shot our lions, they've stripped our women, and then they go back there and they write books about how weird we are. So now it's time to tackle Europe through the eyes of an African. The Oppie documentary will be ready by the end of August. It'll be broadcast on KykNet and then be for sale. It's like a feature-length film documentary and then a live performance. I'm doing one on Shangaan Electro, which will be broadcast by SABC3 in January, and then I'm doing one on the Bacardi house scene in Atteridgeville, which will also be screened in January on SABC3.
Kom dans met my bokkie, ek wil sokkie vanaand. Ek soek 'n poppie op my sy en 'n doppie in my hand. Kom tel jou op jou voorstoep met 'n kos het vir jou borsie. Kar staan en stadig idle, jy moet gou op want ek stors. Baby, vat my aan my sy vas, sit jou hand voor op my bors. Stadig nou, laat ek net my dop net neersit voor ek mos. Moenie jouself kommer nie, ek
on Facebook and Twitter at Jam Sandwich TV.